Welcome to Super Simple Chats, Rest's very own podcast. We will be speaking to industry experts about all things super, trying to make it understandable and relatable for everyday Aussies. After all, it's one of the biggest assets you'll ever have. We're recording this podcast on Gadigal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Any advice you hear on this podcast is general in nature and doesn't take into account your financial situation, needs or objectives. Issued by Retail Employee Superannuation Pty Ltd. Before deciding to join or stay, consider the relevant PDS and TMD at rest.com.au/PDS.
So we've all got our favourite cafe that we go to. I've got a few mates who run cafes and, you see them run off their feet. You hardly ever see them take a break, sometimes even on a Sunday. And it makes you think that running a business, not just a cafe, but any kind of small business, it's full on. There's all this stuff to think about. And so you barely have time to think about what's going on with super. So we're going to do an episode all about running small businesses and super. Joining me today is Chrissy, my co-host here. And we've got our small business expert, Matt from Rest. Hey, Matt.
G'day, how you going?
But before we ask you some questions, I've got a few questions for you, Chrissy.
Oh, okay.
Have you thought about running your own business?
Yeah, I think everyone has.
What would your small business be?
A bookstore.
You got a name for it?
Chrissy's Collection.
It's got a good ring to it. What about you, Matt? Have you ever thought about starting a small business?
Well, I mean, look, I would love to. I was born and raised in a family that's had a small business pretty much since I've been born. I've worked at those small businesses as well. My wife has a small business as well. So while I'd love to, I'm probably a little bit busy in the super space, to be honest. But but I think, I've been working in super for 15 years now. So it's probably a little bit late to sort of turn that corner, but you never know. See what happens in the future.
Might have a career in publishing.
Yeah. I don't think it'd be in books though. More likely
no competition for you, Chris.
Yeah. More likely super or something like that. Or now podcast. I'm back for season 2 actually. So I must have done something right on the first one. So thanks for
fans loved you though.
Yeah, wow.
It's got to be pretty good having so many small businesses in the family and who also have a super specialist on tap.
Well, you'd think so, but they don't ask for too much advice.
Yeah.
Or information, I should be clear, not advice.
But for those of us who aren't lucky enough to have a super specialist at home, let's start at the very beginning. Let's say my bookstore is just opening. What are the main things that I need to start thinking about when it comes to super?
Yeah, it's a good question. And look, I've been working in super for a while. Most of that has sort of been in workplace super, which is dealing with businesses of all size, small, medium and large sort of enterprise businesses. And there's probably 3 key things I would always say to any business of size. First thing is when you start onboarding employees, there's something you need to provide your employees, which is called a standard choice form. Now that sounds a little bit scary, right? But it really is. And a standard choice form is just a form that your employees need to complete within 28 days of starting with you, which just nominates their superannuation fund. So you need to collect this from them. Now, the second thing you need to consider if you don't collect that standard choice form, which I just talked about, is you will need to do what's called a stapled search, which sounds a little bit weird as well. Now, stapling is a relatively new law to superannuation, and stapling was introduced because a lot of employees over the years were collecting multiple super funds. So what a stapled search does, and you do this via an ATO link, I'm sure we could pop somewhere in the chat, or if I'm pointing here or somewhere here. Stapled search basically just allows you to find your employees' existing super funds, which is a positive thing, right? Because, over the years of working in super, I've been in many a workplace where I've done sort of workplace education. We've spoken to somebody and they've got sort of 10, 15 super funds. So, that's not good for anybody. And, when it comes to super, there's generally fees and sometimes insurance premiums that are withdrawn from your super account. So sort of having 10, 15 accounts, I mean, unless you've got some sort of strategy behind it, which I don't think you probably do, is probably not a good choice. So a stapled search allows your employer to find your existing super fund. But if you're an employer and you don't want to sort of get bogged down with that administrative burden of having to do that stapled search, then get them to complete that sort of standard choice form when they start. So they're the first sort of 2 things. Now, the third thing is, well, now you've got your employees on board, you figure out where you've got to pay them, is how do I pay these superannuation contributions? Now, like most funds at Rest, we use what's called a clearinghouse. A clearinghouse basically is an online portal where it allows you to basically log in and pay your contributions to your employees, regardless of where the super fund is. And that's important as well because there's a lot of super funds out there. And instead of you having to go and pay your super contributions to all those individual funds directly, you can just do it through this clearinghouse portal. There's something called the Small Business Clearinghouse, which we'll probably touch on in a bit more detail today, which is another portal. Or you can actually sometimes engage with your payroll provider, your payroll software. Some of those payroll software solutions actually have clearinghouses products inbuilt to them, but you just need to be wary of those. Sometimes there can be a cost, sort of additional cost to your sort of standard payroll packaging. There's plenty of options available to you, but as I said, as I'll always say through these podcasts, is engage with your respective super fund because they're there to help you. And as I said, we've got a clearinghouse solution available to you. So they're the three probably key things. I know that's a bit of a mouthful just to
I still can't remember the first one.
Yeah. So standard choice form, stapled search, and then figure out how you're going to pay your super contributions. As I said, this thing called a clearinghouse, very, very, sort of friendly to use online portal for most part. And there's plenty of solutions available. I'm sure Google would be able to help you. Or look, if you're starting a business from scratch, you've probably engaged an accountant at some point as well, or a business advisory sort of firm that, they will certainly be able to point you in the right direction there. So they're the three things, but geez, bit of an intro there, wasn't it? Geez, sorry about that.
That's really got you.
Okay. And so when do I need to start thinking about that kind of stuff? Is it when I've got novels flying off the shelf, or is it when I'm starting to grow and bring on new employees?
Straight away, Chrissy.
Immediately.
Immediately. First thing you're going to do when you start a business is think about superannuation. Look, I know that's probably not the case, but look, obviously being a little bit biased working in super, we'd love you to start thinking about it straight away. But the reality is you're probably not. But as you start to bring on board employees, obviously this is when you're going to really need to start considering, these sort of those three key things that I talked about, and particularly paying super as well is probably the real key part of that that piece there too. One of the things to consider as well is if you are starting a business and you're a sole trader, as an example, that's an occasion where you don't actually have to pay yourself super contributions if you don't want to.
Right.
I mean,
which we don't recommend.
I mean, look, it really is up to you. Look, I was literally on the phone to one of my mates who's a Sparky, Jimmy. G'day, Jimmy. Just before we jumped on this podcast and I was chatting to him that we were jumping in the studio to talk about this. I said, oh, by the way, I probably mentioned the whole sole trader thing. You don't have to, but, it's probably beneficial for you in the long run from a time point of view. And look, as well, if you do start making personal contributions to your super, as a sole trader, there could be some tax concessions at the end of financial year as well to reduce your taxable income as well. So, that's something, if you're making contributions to your super sole trader, then speak to your accountant, at the end of financial year, because as I said, there might be an element of tax relief for you there too as well. So certainly something to consider, as a sole trader particularly.
So let's go back to my bookstore.
Okay.
We'll use that as a great example.
Yep.
So let's say things are getting a bit busy, romancy books flying off the shelf, and I'm looking to expand.
Okay.
So I want to start a cafe.
Can I work for you?
Have you got experience?
Heaps of experience.
No, wait, you said you're a barista, not a barrister. Am I getting it
can
mixed up?
I can drink coffee. Make coffee. Yeah. Hire me, please.
We'll do your taste testing.
Okay, great.
So say I expand my bookstore and I'm bringing on Phil as a barista.
Yep.
Do I need to pay him super?
Is that because of his legal skills? Am I getting these mixed up? Is that the same thing? Okay, look, no.
We're small business owners. We wear many hats.
Okay, you do actually. You're not wrong actually. And I've seen that particularly, with my family business and my wife's business as well. You wear pretty much every single hat, right? When you start bringing on, your full-time or part-time employees, casuals, etc., this is when you're going to be starting to make sort of more regular super payments are required to. And you're required to make super contributions to what's called eligible employees. An eligible employee is essentially someone that's over the age of 18 and earning any income. You're paying them a salary. So you have to pay them super. On the flip side, people that aren't officially considered eligible employees are anyone that's under the age of 18. So you don't actually have to pay under 18-year-olds if you don't want to, but if they start working more than 30 hours a week, that's when they become eligible employees. Look, I've worked with businesses over the years who just pay all their employees regardless of age. So obviously that's that's an amazing benefit. Starting get those
is better. Yeah.
Starting those contributions rolling in early, the power of compound interest is a beautiful thing, right? But at the same time, as a business, I understand obviously there's a lot of expenses running a business, so you don't actually have to pay those under 18s unless they're working more than 30 hours a week. But if you're over 18s, start receiving a salary, you got to pay them super.
I've been in super for a good few years now, long enough to see a couple of occasions pop up where employers might have missed super guarantee payments. Just how bad would that be for a small business owner if they did accidentally forget one time?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, it is the reality of the super system. There are businesses that do miss their payments, they pay late, pay to the wrong super fund, etc. So, you wouldn't be alone as a business that does that. But look, at the end of the day, it is seen as a bit of a no-no. And, as a business, you need to do everything you can to sort of get those super contributions back on track. I can't reiterate this point more. Super funds will want to help you through that process. They'll guide you through that process. So please reach out to your respective super fund to sort of, get those back on track, because in the day, it's your employees' money. They've worked hard for it and they deserve that to have in their super at a suitable time as well. So, I think just as I said, engage with the super fund to sort of help you get back on track with those.
Yeah. And we all make mistakes, right?
Correct.
Like human error.
Only human. As running a business is tough.
Yeah.
There's so many things, so many curveballs going on. I appreciate it's probably not top of mind, but as I said, if you're listening to this podcast, as I said, the advice is, just engage with the super fund. They want to help you get that back on track as soon as possible.
So if you are one of those business owners like Chrissy's collections, she's got so busy that she's trying to manage employing me and stuff. She's made the mistake and she hasn't quite paid me on time or whatever. Is there a fine or a charge involved, or is it just like a slap on the wrist kind of?
Yeah, look, there is, if you don't pay your super on time or you miss payments, there is something called the super guarantee charge, which you will have to pay. And on top of that, you'll have to lodge what's called an SGC statement, super guarantee charge statement, with the ATO as well, which I don't know, a lot of people, when they hear the word ATO, they get chills down their spine. I know for me. And look, the ATO are doing a good job. Apologies to the ATO. I know for me, even when I lodge my personal tax return at end of financial year and I get to see a few emails at the end of that, a few weeks later, I go, oh, geez, what have I done here?
Nothing strikes fear into me more than logging into Hotmail and seeing a MyGov notification.
I don't tell you about it. I mean, I think I get most of my ATO emails are actually not from the ATO these days as well. There seem to be some sort of spam.
Yeah.
But
click on that link.
Don't click on that link. I know. But look, you do need to lodge that statement. You're busy enough running a business. So if you can avoid that work by paying your super on time, obviously that's beneficial for everybody involved, right? So that's the key.
And how costly would it be?
It's more than likely going to be more than what you were initially owed to pay your employees as well, because there will be a penalty charge, interest and administration fees on top of that super that you were supposed to be paid as well. So probably don't have too much spare money running a business or getting a business up and running. Your bookstore, as an example, there's going to be lots of expenses. The brand new Harry Potter series coming out, I'd imagine. Is that even still a thing? Is there any more books?
I
think you're okay there.
I'm clearly not a bookworm. So yeah, look, I think, there's additional money you probably don't have spare, just pay your super on time and you can avoid all those charges, right?
It's interesting you're talking about the ATO. I've actually had some good interactions with them. So if you're listening out there, love your work.
Me too as well.
So
I'm really painting myself in bad light over here.
Right, exactly. But there's got to be some support, right? If a business is trying to do the right thing, who can they reach out to for help?
I've mentioned a few times, at Rest, we'd love to speak with you. We do have a business help center actually just on our website. We've got a page dedicated directly for employers and even things like, franchises and franchisors and things like that as well. So all the information is available. We're actually building a sort of SG calculator at the moment as well to help you with those payments, calculate those those payments as well. So look, there's plenty of resources. I mean, Google's your best friend, sort of go down that path. But as I said, if you come onto our website at Rest, we've got plenty of resources available. As I said as well, look, if you do have an accountant, I'm really offloading a lot of work to the accountant here at the moment. So,
season 3.
Yeah, season 3. We'll bring the accountant in. We'll bring him in. There's plenty available for you. It's, as I said, just finding the time as well, which is another, non-luxury of running a business as well to speak with them. But there's so many ways to engage with the super fund. It doesn't necessarily have to be over the phone. There's plenty of tools at your fingertips if you needed to.
And Chrissy, obviously you just call Matt up for
I just tap him on the shoulder.
But do you guys actually appreciate getting those sort of calls from businesses?
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, I mean, as I said, this is the space that I've been working in. As Workplace Super is the sort of the team that I've been working in for a long time now. We love being able to support businesses. I mean, that's why I've got a job. This is what I'm here to do, and we really pride ourselves on sort of helping businesses with, their transactional obligations. And then there's another element to super as well that we love to do in my team, and that's sort of that financial literacy piece. Obviously this is somewhat of that from a business perspective, but also from an employee's perspective.
Yeah.
There's a really big financial literacy gap in Australia, and just sort of understanding the basics of super. So we actually do a lot of sort of workplace education and super in the workplace, super one-on-one education sessions. They're very rewarding. And as I said, if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to hear more about that, please feel free to reach out to us after this. We'd love to chat with you more about it.
Yeah, awesome.
That's definitely why I work in super. Like, I believe in the value of the product.
Yeah, it's there to support you.
Yeah.
And it's really important. But I appreciate for most people, super, as an employee or an employer, as I said, I'm very realistic in terms of the priority and the pecking order. But, there's a lot of things you can do as a business and an employee sort of early on that'll make a massive difference, down the line.
Yeah.
So, Matt, you obviously love helping out small business owners, but does the government provide any services, particularly for small businesses in this area?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty. I think just from a transactional point of view and make no super contribution, there's something called the Small Business Clearinghouse. That facility, as I said, if you've got employees with multiple super funds across, various industries that they've accumulated, then you can actually log on to the Small Business Clearinghouse and make those contributions there. Unfortunately, though, that's closing down. So it is closing down at the end of June 2026. What are we now? 2025? Yeah. Okay. That's my brain ticking over. So about a year away, the Small Business Clearinghouse is closing down. So you will unfortunately only be able to use that for another year if you're jumping on now, although using it now, we'll have to find another solution. And look, at Rest, we're building out a new actually clearinghouse solution in the future. And I'm sure we can touch on that in a bit more detail too.
Yeah, great.
As I said, feel free to reach out to us if you need some support around that too.
So I hear talk in the office and around the super world that we're about to go into Payday Super. So just to ease small business people's minds about the interim time, can you tell us about what's planned in this transitional phase?
Yeah, look, at the moment, you would have heard a lot of talk from my team in the workplace super team. We don't stop talking over my side, so apologies for all that noise. But
we hear you.
But look, we're in the process of actually building a new Payday Super solution, partnering with a sort of tech provider at the moment. So just have to watch this space.
Awesome. That sounds really helpful. So we'll put some links in the show notes, of course, and we won't put your personal line in there, but we'll have some sort of help for you.
I mean, you can if you want.
Excellent. Great.
So we obviously know about Payday Super because we work in the industry. But for those that don't, I just want to spend a bit more time going into detail about what it is and what it's going to mean for businesses around Australia.
Payday Super is, it's one of the biggest shifts in the super industry from a business point of view and employee's point of view that I've seen for some time. Just to give you some context as well, when I first started working in super, 15 years ago, showing my age a little bit, this hairline is receding at an incredible rate. And that was, when I first started working in super, it was actually in a Rest call center, actually. So a long time I've been working with Rest, but a lot of the calls in the call center back in the day were businesses, small businesses like yourself, your bookstore. I'm sure I spoke to many bookstore back in the day. And they were asking, how do I go about paying contributions? What's the right way to do it? And back then you could actually send in a contribution on the remittance on the back of a check. And this is, 10 years ago, people still sending in checks with a remittance on the back of it. And, trying to allocate that accordingly, is absolute nightmare. So since then, SuperStream's come into effect, which is basically employers having to submit contributions digitally with the data standard as well. And now Payday Super is probably just that next iteration. And what Payday Super, the difference between Payday Super and what it is now is, at the moment, super, and for a long time, is only required to be paid quarterly. So you only have to pay it, 4 times a year. And you actually have 28 days after the quarter to actually make those contributions as well. So there's plenty of time. So I've had many conversations with Rest members or small businesses employees or business employees where they've said, well, Matt, I can see on my payslip that I've got super paid to me, but I've just checked my Rest account and it's not in there. And that's because your employer doesn't actually have to pay it until the end of the quarter. So it's sort of withheld to then. Payday Super, you actually have to pay it on, receipt of paying your employees' salary or wages. So it's a really big shift in the industry, to be honest. Imagine going from quarterly to weekly. As a business, that's a big,
huge admin burden.
Yeah.
It's a huge admin burden, which is why super funds and providers need to come up with some new technology to be able to help businesses and support businesses with that as well. Because can you imagine sending in a check, pretty much every day to your employees like it was back in the day, right? So it's a big shift in the industry. And as I said, if you think about your bookstore, Chrissy, as an example, it's not just how regularly you're going to have to pay this contribution. It's almost like a cash flow thing you need to consider as well, because if you've gone from quarterly to weekly, all that money that you might have had, sort of in your accounts to pay for electricity bills and, the coffee shop that this guy over here is running as well, and all the free coffee he's drinking too. So allegedly, there's some other things you need to consider as well. So Payday Super it's a really big shift in the industry. I'm certainly having a lot more conversations with businesses around it now, and how they sort of can get ready and gear up for it come July 2026.
And is it definitely going to happen, or is it just being talked about at this stage?
Yeah, it's not law yet,
right?
But it's certainly being considered. But I think most businesses are sort of working with their super fund or super funds at the moment to get ready for it, which is probably a good sign that it may come in July 2026.
And so with Payday Super coming in, will there be further changes to the super guarantee charge?
Yeah, there is some changes coming to the SGC charge. Geez, that's a mouthful. And look, to be honest, it can get a little bit complicated. So with the magic of podcasts and links, can we just pop like a link somewhere here?
So before we jump off topic, why is the government making these changes?
Yeah, probably two key things. I think first one being accountability. We've mentioned a few times today, employers underpaying, superannuation not paying to the wrong fund. So it does make employers, businesses a lot more accountable. And I know that's an additional burden. So if you listen to this podcast, it's not me making these changes. It's a legislative change. But look, it does, once you sort of get into a groove, I think as a business, you sort of get a bit more familiar and paying it more regularly. It might be somewhat easier for you. As I said, technology pending as well, obviously. And then the other part is obviously transparency as well. So as I mentioned, that example, that REST member that I talked about who showed me their pay slip and they said their super was in there, but they couldn't see it in their REST account. Well, with Payday Super, it's more than likely it's actually going to be in their account. Right. And from an employee's perspective, a super member's perspective, they're going to get that power of compound interest ticking away a lot earlier. There's more regular payments going in. And as I said, you can see, and if you see money going into any account, your bank account, super fund, you're probably going to get a little bit more interested in it as well, which is what we want, right? So, so I think you're probably going to start being naturally more engaged with your super with more payments going in. So look, it can be, obviously I think it is a positive thing, to be honest.
It does make sense, doesn't it? The whole idea, like it's just that whole, if you're wanting to see where your balance is at, just downloading the app, that sort of stuff. It just makes sense to making a much more of a digital experience.
Yeah.
Assuming that's what's going to happen with Payday Super.
There's more technology coming around the corner, whether it's clearinghouses or sort of payroll providers, payroll systems, they're all having to enhance their technology. And, for an employee's or a member's point of view, that technology is already available to be able to sort of view, your super. If you're a REST member, as an example, you can look at your super via the app.
I like to do it every day.
I mean, a lot of people do, and when markets are sort of bouncing up and down as well, like that's what a lot of people like to look at their super.
It's a good time to learn about the markets, though, when you see it fluctuating.
100%, yeah. And a lot of people, that's when the penny sort of drops. Like, oh, my super is invested in. Why is it bouncing around, type thing? And that's when we obviously want to chat to you about, why it's doing that. But it makes it a bit more real. So having that app, particularly the REST app, obviously a little bit biased. It's pretty good.
I think I definitely had that misconception of like super being a savings account.
Yeah, a lot of people
I think
do.
most people do, yeah.
Yeah, it's savings for retirement.
Yeah, savings
so
for
similar.
retirement. So I feel like we've covered a lot. But before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, we've covered today, just sort of business and super, but particularly Payday Super, as I said, is probably one of the biggest things coming around the corner. I can't stress this enough. Engage with your super fund. Obviously, reach out to us. Can I give my team like a shameless plug, or is that
sure.
is that
I think
cool?
you're going to
frowned upon? I'm going to do it anyway. So I mean, Super Solutions at REST. But you can literally reach out to my team. Feel free to email supersolutions, all one word, at rest.com.au. You'll literally hear from myself or my team. We'd love to be able to support you with that. I know at the moment we've actually already run one Payday Super webinar at the back end of last year for our REST employers, and we're going to be running these more regularly as we sort of gear up into July 2026 as well. So we'll be communicating that to all our employers. Or if you're listening to this right now, you want more information, I'm sure we'll be able to sort of get in touch with you as well. Or you can reach out to me. I've now got my team's email out in the universe now as well. Exactly. So sorry, team. But look, all jokes aside, we'd love to support you. But as I said, that's probably the biggest thing. Engage with the super fund. As your accountant is probably another point of contact as well. Business advisory groups. There's so much support available for you, and yeah, we want to chat to you too.
So, Chrissy, after hearing all of this sort of stuff, are you still going to start your bookstore? Do you still feel like it's too tricky?
I don't think I'm done with the space of super yet.
Right, okay.
I think I'm going to stay in superannuation.
But the idea of running a small business, hopefully this has helped make it a bit easier, a little bit simpler, hopefully.
Definitely. Well,
or listen to this podcast again.
Obviously.
But if you have enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to like, follow and subscribe.
And if you'd like any more information on the things we spoke about today, make sure to check the show notes.
And that is
super simple.